I realize that the conception of these giant creatures, they're called Bigfoot, is a fantastic subject, and a lot of people scoff at it and don't believe it. But I believe it. I'm convinced that these creatures exist, uh, and I'm going to prove it if it takes me the rest of my life.
Abominable snowmen. Abominable snowmen, as far as we in the Western world are concerned, live in the Himalayas. But the evidence for their actual existence is pretty unscientific, pretty tenuous. We have footprints, eyewitness accounts, and a few odd and rather doubtful skull caps. The image that's come down to us of the shape of these creatures is rather like this. They're usually depicted as big, hairy, heavily chested creatures with long arms, short legs, rather ape-like in proportions, with a crest on the top of the skull and a big toe that sticks out separately from other toes. It's a surprise for most people to learn that legends of the abominable snowmen and their kind occur all over the world, and including, of all places, North America. Now, perhaps it shouldn't really be a surprise, because wherever you get snowman legends, you get areas of wilderness, particularly mountain wilderness. And mountain wilderness is something that North America has plenty of. The west coast of America is characterized by vast blocks of mountain ranges running generally in a north and southerly direction. They form a barrier between the Great Plains of North America and the orange groves of the Pacific coast. Now, California, to most people, is the sophisticated Sunset Strip from San Francisco to San Diego. But in fact, California's 160,000 square miles is largely uninhabited mountains and deserts. North of California, the state of Oregon is even more of a wilderness. Only 2 million people live in its 100,000 square mile area. Further north still is Washington, a state the size of England. Again, much of it wilderness. Across the 49th parallel into Canada, the wilderness continues, with its spectacular forests, its snow mountains, and its vast waterfalls. This is all Bigfoot country, much of it unexplored and unmapped. When one realizes this country has really only been open to settlers for a little over 100 years, and that most of the population live on the coast and in the fertile valleys of the low coastal mountain ranges, it's not really difficult to accept the possibility that creatures unknown to science could live there in perfect solitude and safety. That the potential for even quite a sizable population of big feet is there, nobody would deny. But of course, this is not any sort of a proof that such creatures exist. Into this wild and empty Bigfoot country has come rather an unusual cowboy leading a rather unusual posse. His name is Roger Patterson, and for 8 years he has led similar posses into the wilderness in search not of rustlers or bad men, but on the trail of the Bigfoot. His method of tracking down a Bigfoot is reminiscent of looking for a needle in a haystack, but on a recent occasion he did, in fact, turn up a needle. But we'll come to that in a moment. A few months ago in Washington, D.C., I was called in to examine and make a report on a film of the Bigfoot. But let Roger Patterson himself approach you with his story and his film.
In 1967, the 20th of October, myself and Bob Gimlin were going into Northern California area. It's in the Humboldt County there. And this is about 40 miles back in the wilderness. The nearest little settlement is a town called Orleans. There's approximately 17,000 square miles in there that are unmapped. And it's a very primitive area, very rugged area. We had been in this area trying to find evidence of the giant creatures called Bigfoot or Sasquatch. And we had been in there about a week and a half. We were camped on the Bluff Creek there. This particular day, we had started up Bluff Creek and had gotten about 4 miles or so from our camp. And we had started to come around a bend. Was riding this little horse here. His name's Peanuts. And he shied and jumped backwards and reared up. And as he did, I tried to pull him down. And as I did so, I pulled too hard and we both fell to the ground. I was able to get up, and as I held the horse by the reins and come around him, I then looked over to my left, and I seen this creature. And it was standing by the creek there, about 120 feet away from us. And then it started moving away from us, walked up the bank, and turned around, looked at us again, and I was able to get into my saddlebags and get my camera out and start shooting pictures. I yelled at Bob to cover me in case the creature did turn and attack us. At this point, when I was able to start getting pictures, she had walked up the bank and was going on across this sandbar. Well, I ran directly, kind of a 3/4 from towards her, actually, and run across the creek, was able to come up on the other side, and I got some fairly good pictures. The creature was massive. I would say that it was 7 to 7.5 feet tall and probably 350 to 500 pounds. It was taking an average of 43-inch stride walking, and they measured 14.5 inches long, each print, and 5.5 inches wide. Bob Gimlin had seen this thing much better than I did because he was looking at it directly and I was trying to look through a camera. However, I could see it plain enough, and it was quite a great moment for me.
What we've seen is certainly not acceptable as scientific evidence. Indeed, some of you may already be feeling that you've been looking at rather a splendid hoax, and that the actor is really a bit of a ham. Yet, talking to Roger Patterson, as I have done, it's very hard not to believe in him. It's also hard to entirely dismiss this film based on its rather unpromising face value. We've seen the film, and therefore we've only got the impression, the visual impression of this creature. You and Bob Gimlin were there, so you had the chance of absorbing other sort of sensory impressions, such as sound or smell. Now, is there anything you can tell us about it which we cannot appreciate from the film?
We did detect a definite smell once that we had crossed the creek and got to the place where this creature had been. There was a strong, musky smell, a little hard for me to describe. It seemed somewhat like a dog that maybe had rolled in something dead and got into water afterwards, and this whole thing turned into a rather unpleasant odor.
Roger Patterson, do you believe what you saw? Or do you think you could possibly have been the victim of a hoax?
I don't believe that there was any possibility that this was a hoax. The creature, to both of us, appeared very natural. The muscle movement indicated to us that it was much plainer, I think, than what it shows in the film. Indicated that it wasn't anything made up. This area is back in about 40 miles in from the nearest settlement, and it's in a very rugged terrain. For somebody to have been at the right place or know where we was going, because we didn't have anything planned, we were going in different directions, would have been extremely unlikely. It was hunting season up in that area at this time, and I doubt if anybody would be up there roaming around in something like this just for the fun of it.
A risk, in other words.
It'd be a tremendous risk for somebody because some people will shoot anything that looks like this.
Well, our impression of you is the impression that we've got from the film, and there you are riding in a very sort of elegant style through the forest. Now, is this your normal habitat? Is this what you normally do?
In the last few years has been practically all that I have been doing. I have a small horse ranch in Washington State, up out of Yakima, Washington, that I breed quarter horses, and also have some Australian dogs there that I breed. And this has been partly how some of my income has come in, and it kept me going on this thing.
What are your plans for the future?
We have an expedition that we're forming right now to go into the area, into that Northern California area, and also into other parts of the Northwest. And our ultimate goal is to capture one of these creatures alive and unharmed. We're also, of course, hoping to get pictures and find more tracks and find where these things exist the most. I have brought back pictures of this creature. I've brought back tape recordings of many, many people that have seen these things throughout the Northwest. It doesn't seem to, it hasn't done the job of proving it, and I didn't think it would. Now we have to capture one and prove this, and I might say that if it takes me the rest of my life, I'm going to do it. I realize that the conception of these giant creatures, they're called Bigfoot, is a fantastic subject, and a lot of people scoff at it and don't believe it, but I believe it. I'm convinced that these creatures exist, and I'm going to prove it if it takes me the rest of my life.